Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where battles rage on every front. Some battles are visible, the conflicts, the struggles, the challenges of life. Others are hidden deep within us, the battles of the heart, the mind, the spirit. Each of us faces battles we never thought we would fight, and if we're honest, many of us are tired, worn out, wondering if there's a way to find victory and peace. But today, I want to share with you a truth that can change your life, a truth that has stood the test of time. It is this: you don't have to fight your battles alone. You don't have to carry the weight of your struggles on your own shoulders, because there is one who is greater than any battle you will ever face. There is a God who sees you, who knows you, who loves you, and who is ready to fight for you. When you find yourself standing on the battlefield of life, surrounded by challenges and uncertainties, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed and alone. The weight of your burdens may seem too heavy to carry, and the obstacles before you may appear insurmountable. In these moments, a powerful truth emerges. The battle is not yours, but God's. This profound realization can transform the way you approach every struggle, offering not just comfort, but a path to victory that is not reliant on your own strength or ability. There is a divine promise woven throughout the fabric of history and faith, reminding us that we are not called to fight every battle on our own. When ancient armies faced overwhelming odds, they often heard words of assurance, urging them to stand still and let God take control. These were not mere words of encouragement, but divine instructions to trust in a power greater than their own. When they obeyed, miraculous victories followed, walls crumbled, giants fell, and seas parted. These stories are not just relics of the past, but living examples of what happens when we surrender our battles to God. Human nature often drives us to take control, to strategize, and to rely on our own understanding. We are wired to think that success depends on our efforts, that we must fight with every ounce of our strength to overcome adversity. But there are battles designed to show us the limits of our strength and the boundlessness of God's power. These are the battles where our weapons and strategies fail, where our wisdom falls short, and where our endurance runs dry. In these moments, when our resources are depleted, God steps in with His might and His plans that are higher than ours. Letting God fight our battles does not mean a passive withdrawal from life. It is not about sitting back and doing nothing. Instead, it is about a shift in perspective and a posture of the heart. It is about acknowledging that while we may be in the midst of the fight, the outcome does not rest in our hands alone. It is about releasing the grip of control and allowing God to take the lead. This surrender is not a sign of defeat, but a declaration of trust. It is a choice to believe that God's power is made perfect in our weakness and that His plans for us are good, even when we cannot see the way forward. When we release our battles to God, something remarkable happens. The weight of fear begins to lift, and the fog of confusion starts to clear. We find peace that does not make sense in the natural world, a calm in the storm, and strength rising where we thought we had none. God's involvement brings a supernatural element to our struggles. He fights on levels we cannot see, arranging circumstances, changing hearts, and opening doors that were once closed. His methods are often beyond our understanding, but they are always for our benefit. Trusting God to fight our battles is also about standing firm in faith. It requires patience and courage, especially when we do not see immediate change. The temptation to step back into the fight with our own solutions can be strong, but holding the line and waiting on God allows His plan to unfold. This trust is not passive, but active, involving prayer, perseverance, and a steadfast belief that God is at work, even in silence. Surrender is a word that often carries connotations of defeat, weakness, and giving up. In a world that glorifies strength, independence, and self-reliance, surrender can feel like a contradiction. It goes against the grain of human nature, which pushes us to hold on tightly, to fight with every ounce of strength, and to never show vulnerability. However, in the spiritual realm, surrender is not a sign of weakness, but rather the ultimate expression of strength. It is a courageous act that requires deep trust and profound faith, a step that allows the divine to intervene in our lives and lead us through battles we cannot win on our own. True surrender is not a passive act of resigning oneself to circumstances. It is an active choice to lay down our own agendas, fears, and control, and to place our lives in the hands of God. This kind of surrender is a powerful act of strength because it demands that we confront our pride and acknowledge our limitations. It requires us to admit that we do not have all the answers, that our strength is not enough, and that our vision is not always clear. It is in this admission of our own insufficiency that we create space for God's all-sufficiency to move in our lives. When we surrender, we shift from striving to trusting. We move from a mindset of, I must do this, to God will do this. This shift is not about abandoning our responsibilities or giving up on life. Instead, it is about aligning ourselves with a higher power and a greater purpose. It is choosing to believe that God's plans for us are better than anything we could imagine, even when the path ahead is unclear. Surrendering to God does not mean that challenges will disappear, but it does mean that we no longer have to carry the burden alone. One of the profound strengths of surrender is that it brings freedom. When we stop struggling to control every aspect of our lives, we find release from anxiety, fear, and the pressure to perform. The weight of expectations, whether from ourselves, from others, or from society, begins to lift. In this newfound freedom, there is peace, a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that comes from knowing that we are not alone and that God is working on our behalf. Surrender also opens the door to divine strength. When we let go, God steps in. His strength becomes evident in our weakness. His wisdom guides us when we do not know which way to turn. His provision sustains us when our resources run dry. It is in the act of surrendering that we position ourselves to receive all that God wants to give us. We are no longer striving in our own power, but resting in His. There is a profound mystery in how surrender works. It feels counterintuitive to let go when every instinct tells us to hold on tighter. But those who have experienced the power of surrender know that it is not the end of the fight. Rather, it is the beginning of a new kind of strength, a strength that is not born of human effort, but of divine intervention. It is the strength to endure, to persevere, and to walk forward with confidence, knowing that we are supported by a force far greater than ourselves. Trusting God's power over your own strength is a transformative choice that shifts the way you navigate life's challenges. Human strength, while valuable, is limited. It can only take us so far before it reaches its breaking point. Physical endurance fades, mental resilience can wear thin, and emotional reserves can be exhausted. When we rely solely on our own strength, we often find ourselves struggling to keep up, pushing harder and feeling overwhelmed when things do not go as planned. In contrast, God's power is limitless. It is an unending source of strength, wisdom, and guidance that never falters or fails. The decision to trust in God's power requires humility and faith. It involves acknowledging that our understanding and abilities have limits and that there are situations beyond our control. It is a recognition that while we may see only a small piece of the puzzle, God sees the whole picture. He knows what lies ahead and prepares a path for us, even when we cannot see it ourselves. When we trust in His power, we are not giving up, but rather stepping into a partnership where our efforts are supported and multiplied by His strength. One of the greatest benefits of trusting in God's power is the relief from the pressure to have all the answers. When we believe that God is in control, we can let go of the need to micromanage every detail of our lives. This does not mean that we stop working hard or making wise choices, but it does mean that we stop carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. We learn to move forward with confidence, knowing that God will guide our steps and provide what we need along the way. This kind of trust is particularly important during difficult seasons. When storms arise and life feels uncertain, our own strength can waver. We may experience doubt, fear, or confusion, but when we anchor ourselves in God's power, we find stability. His strength is not swayed by circumstances. His promises remain true no matter what challenges we face. He is a firm foundation in a world that often feels unstable. Trusting in God's power also changes the way we respond to obstacles. Instead of seeing them as insurmountable, we begin to view them as opportunities for God to demonstrate His greatness. We are not intimidated by giants because we know that God is bigger. We are not defeated by setbacks because we believe that God can turn them into comebacks. Our perspective shifts from focusing on the size of our problems to focusing on the size of our God. This trust does not come without effort. It requires intentionality to build a relationship with God through prayer, reflection, and listening to His guidance. It involves reminding ourselves of His past faithfulness, reading stories of how He has helped others, and surrounding ourselves with voices of hope and encouragement. As we strengthen our faith, our reliance on God's power becomes more natural, and our own strength, while still present, becomes secondary to His. The beauty of trusting in God's power is that it allows us to step into a place of rest, even while facing challenges. We find that we do not have to strive in our own strength, but can lean into His. His power is made perfect in our weakness, and through Him we find the ability to overcome obstacles that would otherwise be too great for us to bear. Faith is not just a feeling or a concept. It is an action, a choice to believe and trust, even when circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. It is easy to have faith when life is smooth, when prayers are answered quickly, and when blessings flow without interruption. But the true test of faith comes in the midst of trials, when the path ahead is unclear, and when waiting on God feels like standing still while the world moves on. In these moments, faith is not passive, but incredibly active. It involves holding on to the promises of God, declaring them over your life, and standing firm even when you do not see immediate results. Acting in faith is about moving forward with confidence, not because you see the end of the road, but because you trust the one who holds the road. It is about taking steps, sometimes small and hesitant, towards what God has called you to do, even when you do not have all the answers. This kind of faith often requires stepping outside of your comfort zone, taking risks, and being willing to look foolish in the eyes of the world. It is the kind of faith that builds boats on dry land, walks into fiery furnaces, and steps into raging seas. Faith also means not allowing doubt to dictate your actions. Doubt is a natural response to uncertainty, but faith chooses to listen to the voice of God over the voice of doubt. It is not about pretending challenges do not exist, but rather about focusing on the power of God to overcome them. When doubt whispers that the situation is hopeless, faith responds with the assurance that nothing is impossible for God. When fear tries to paralyze you, faith moves your feet forward. There is also a relationship between faith and obedience. True faith does not just believe that God can do something, but also acts according to His direction. Obedience is often the physical manifestation of your faith. When you act in faith, you are not just hoping for a miracle, you are positioning yourself to receive one. It is like planting a seed and then preparing for the harvest. You may not see the growth immediately, but you water the soil, pull the weeds, and nurture what you have planted, because you believe that God will bring it to fruition. Faith often requires persistence. There will be times when you pray and nothing changes, when you work hard and do not see results, and when you seek answers and hear silence. It is in these times that faith digs in its heels and refuses to give up. It is the faith of those who walked around the walls of Jericho day after day, seeing no change, but believing that with every step, they were one step closer to a breakthrough. It is the faith of those who, when told to cast their nets again after a long night of catching nothing, chose to trust the word of Jesus over their own experience. This kind of faith not only changes circumstances, but also changes you. It strengthens your character, deepens your relationship with God, and develops a resilience that can withstand the storms of life. When you act in faith, you are not only inviting God to work in your situation, but also allowing Him to work in you. He builds patience, endurance, and a steadfast spirit that does not waver with every wind of change. The journey of faith is not always easy, but every step taken in faith brings you closer to the fulfillment of God's promises. God's ways are higher than our ways, and His understanding far exceeds our own. As human beings, we often find ourselves trying to make sense of life through our limited perspective. We analyze, strategize, and plan according to what we see and what we know. However, our vision is finite. We see only what is directly in front of us, only the present moment and the remnants of the past. But God sees it all, past, present, and future, like a master artist who already envisions the completed masterpiece while still laying down the first brushstrokes. There are times in life when things do not go according to our plans. We face setbacks, closed doors, and unexpected detours. It is natural to feel frustrated and confused, wondering why things are not aligning with our expectations. In these moments, it is important to remember that God's perspective is different from ours. Where we see a roadblock, He might see a redirection to a better path. Where we see a delay, He might be orchestrating a perfect timing that we cannot yet understand. What feels like a loss to us might be God's way of clearing the way for something greater. Understanding that God's ways are higher than ours also means recognizing that His plans are rooted in love and wisdom. He is not a distant deity moving pieces on a chessboard without regard for our feelings or futures. He is a loving Father who desires good for His children. Sometimes what we perceive as a setback is actually His protection. Perhaps He is keeping us from a situation that would harm us, or maybe He is preparing us for the responsibilities that come with the blessings we are praying for. His no is often not a rejection, but a redirection, guiding us to something more aligned with His purpose for our lives. When things do not make sense, we can find comfort in knowing that God is not surprised. He is not caught off guard by our circumstances. He already has a plan, a way through, and a purpose in everything we experience. He can take what seems broken and bring beauty from it. He can transform our trials into testimonies and our pain into purpose. Even in the most difficult seasons, He is working behind the scenes, weaving together the threads of our lives into a tapestry that will eventually display His glory. Trusting in God's higher ways requires surrender. It means letting go of the need to control every outcome and instead resting in His wisdom. It means choosing faith over fear and believing that even when you cannot see the way forward, God is leading you on the right path. It is an act of humility to acknowledge that His understanding is far greater than yours, and that His plans are not only better but perfect. When we align our will with His, we open ourselves up to possibilities and blessings that we could never achieve on our own. This perspective also encourages patience. When life feels like it is at a standstill, or when progress is slow, remembering that God's timing is perfect can bring peace. He is never in a hurry, yet He is never late. His timing is not only about the right moment, but also about preparing us to be ready when that moment arrives. Sometimes what feels like waiting is actually God's way of developing our character, strengthening our faith, and building a foundation that can support the weight of the blessings He is preparing for us. God's higher ways often involve leading us through situations that require faith and trust. He might ask us to step out into the unknown, to take risks, or to let go of what is comfortable. These moments are opportunities to experience His faithfulness in new ways. When we follow His lead, even when the path is unclear, we position ourselves to witness His power and provision. We learn to walk by faith, not by sight, and to rely on His strength instead of our own. Surrendering control is one of the hardest things for us to do. As human beings, we have a natural desire to hold on to the reins of our lives, to steer our own course, and to make things happen according to our plans and timelines. We often believe that if we just try hard enough, think long enough, and work tirelessly, we can solve every problem and overcome every obstacle. But the truth is, there are many things in life that are simply beyond our control. No amount of worrying, stressing, or striving can change certain circumstances. This is why surrender is not a sign of weakness, but a profound act of faith and trust in God. Surrendering to God means acknowledging that He is God and we are not. It is about recognizing His sovereignty over all things and admitting that our own strength and understanding are limited. When we surrender, we shift our focus from our own ability to God's power. It is like letting go of the oars in a storm and allowing God to take over, trusting that He will guide us safely to shore. Surrender is not giving up. It is giving over, handing over our worries, our fears, and our desires to the One who holds the universe in His hands. This act of surrender is not a one-time event, but a daily choice. Each morning, we can choose to release our grip on the things we cannot control and place them in God's capable hands. It might be a relationship that is strained, a health issue that persists, a financial struggle, or a dream that seems out of reach. Whatever it is, surrendering means saying, God, I trust You with this. I believe that You are working even when I cannot see it. It is about finding peace in the midst of uncertainty because you know that God is in control. Surrendering control also brings freedom. When we try to manage everything on our own, we carry a weight that we were never meant to bear. It leads to anxiety, frustration, and exhaustion. But when we surrender to God, we release that weight and allow Him to carry our burdens. His Word tells us to cast our cares on Him because He cares for us. This is not just a comforting thought, but a practical invitation to lay down our struggles at His feet. It means we do not have to have all the answers or fix everything ourselves. Instead, we can rest in His presence, knowing that He is already at work. When we surrender, we make room for God to move in our lives. Sometimes our need for control can actually block His blessings. We may be so focused on our own plans that we miss His plans, which are always greater. Surrendering opens the door for God to do what only He can do. It is an act of faith that says, God, I trust your timing, your ways, and your plan. It allows Him to lead us into places we could never go on our own and to accomplish things in our lives that exceed our expectations. Surrender also involves letting go of the outcome. It is easy to say we trust God, but still hold on to specific expectations of how things should turn out. True surrender means giving God not only the situation, but also our desired results. It means saying, even if things do not go the way I hope, I will still trust you. This kind of surrender is powerful because it frees us from disappointment and keeps our focus on God instead of our circumstances. It is not about passive resignation, but about active trust, believing that whatever happens, God is good and His plans for us are good. Faith is not just a feeling. It is a choice, an action, and a way of life. It is easy to have faith when everything is going well, when our prayers are being answered, and when life is unfolding according to our plans. But true faith is tested in the trials, in the waiting, and in the seasons of uncertainty. It is in those moments when the road ahead is unclear and the answers are not coming that our faith is either strengthened or shaken. Faith is believing in what we cannot see, holding on to hope when circumstances suggest otherwise, and trusting that God is at work even in the silence. Faith involves stepping out of our comfort zones. When God calls us to new places, to new challenges, or to take a leap of faith, it often feels uncomfortable. The familiar feels safe, and the unknown can stir up fear and doubt. But faith requires us to take that step forward, even if we do not know where our foot will land. It is like Peter stepping out of the boat to walk on water, keeping his eyes on Jesus allowed him to do the impossible. It is only when he looked at the waves that he began to sink. Faith is keeping our eyes on God, not on the storm around us. Faith is also an active trust in God's promises. The Bible is filled with God's promises to His people, promises of provision, protection, peace, and purpose. When we face difficult situations, we can stand on these promises as a solid foundation. God is not a man that He should lie, nor a son of man that He should change His mind. If He has promised something, He will fulfill it. Faith means believing this truth even when our reality does not yet reflect it. It is the assurance that God's word is more reliable than our circumstances. Living by faith often means moving forward without having all the answers. It is a journey, not a destination. Along the way, we might only see one step at a time, but God sees the whole path. He provides us with what we need for today and asks us to trust Him for tomorrow. Faith does not mean we ignore our challenges or pretend they do not exist. Instead, it means acknowledging them while also believing that God is greater than any obstacle we face. It is about having confidence that He is working all things together for our good, even when the outcome is not what we expected. Faith involves waiting on God. Sometimes the hardest part of faith is the waiting period when it feels like nothing is happening. But God often does His greatest work in the waiting. It is in these seasons that He refines us, shapes our character, and prepares us for what is to come. Waiting is not a waste of time when we are waiting on God. It is an opportunity to draw closer to Him, to deepen our relationship, and to build our trust. The waiting room of faith is where patience grows and where hope is sustained. Faith also calls us to act even when we are afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the determination to move forward despite it. When God calls us to do something, He equips us with the strength and courage we need. We see this throughout Scripture from Moses, who doubted his ability to lead, to David, who faced a giant with nothing but a sling and stones. Their stories remind us that when we act in faith, God meets us in that place of obedience and provides what we need. Faith is not about our power, but about His power working through us. When we let God fight our battles, we experience a profound sense of peace. This peace is not merely the absence of conflict or a temporary calm in the midst of a storm. It is a deep, abiding tranquility that comes from knowing that God is in control. The world often offers peace through external circumstances, through stability, success, or the resolution of problems. But God's peace is different. It is a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that guards our hearts and minds, even when everything around us is chaotic. It is a peace that is not dependent on our situation, but is rooted in our relationship with God. This peace comes when we learn to surrender our worries to Him. Many of us carry burdens that weigh us down, burdens of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. We try to manage everything on our own, thinking that if we can just figure it out or work harder, the peace will come. But true peace is not something we achieve. It is something we receive. It is a gift from God that comes when we lay our burdens at His feet and trust Him to handle what we cannot. He invites us to cast all our cares on Him because He cares for us. And when we do, He replaces our anxiety with His peace. God's peace also fills us when we learn to be still in His presence. The world is filled with noise and distractions, and it can be challenging to find moments of quiet. But in the stillness, God speaks to our hearts. He reminds us of His love, His promises, and His power. Being still before God is an act of faith. It is choosing to pause, to listen, and to rest in Him. It is in these moments of stillness that His peace washes over us, calming our minds and soothing our souls. The psalmist wrote, "Be still and know that I am God." This stillness is not inactivity, but a posture of trust and surrender. The peace of God also empowers us to respond differently to life's challenges. When we are at peace, we are not easily shaken by bad news or difficult circumstances. Instead of reacting with fear or frustration, we can respond with faith and confidence. This peace anchors us, keeping us steady when the world around us feels unstable. It allows us to navigate life's storms with a sense of calm and clarity, knowing that God is with us and that He is fighting on our behalf. It is this peace that enables us to say, "It is well with my soul," even when the waves are high. Experiencing God's peace also transforms our relationships. When we are at peace with God, it overflows into how we interact with others. We become peacemakers, bringing calm and comfort to those around us. Instead of contributing to chaos or conflict, we bring a presence of peace that reflects God's love. This peace helps us to forgive, to extend grace, and to love others as He loves us. It creates an atmosphere where healing and restoration can take place. Peace is not just for us to hold on to, but for us to share with a world that is desperately searching for it. This peace remains even when we do not have all the answers. Life often presents us with situations that are confusing or difficult to understand. We may not always see how God is working or why certain things happen. But His peace reassures us that we do not need to have all the answers because He does. It allows us to walk by faith, trusting that God is leading us even when the path is unclear. His peace is a reminder that He is faithful, that He is good, and that He will bring us through whatever we face.